An honor to agree with the comments that have just been made. We do need to come together and provide assistance to the American public, to those that have been so extremely adversely affected, not merely by COVID, but by the, in some cases, very offensive uses of government power, and actually unauthorized power in numerous circumstances, taking away people's freedom for the first time in American history when they were not sick, quarantining people who were not ill, shutting down businesses, picking and choosing winners and losers among businesses. And yet, we as Republicans have been begging our friends across the aisle, come on, there are things ready to be used, ready-made. The money that was appropriated several months ago, there's over $100 billion, maybe a whole lot more than $100 billion, waiting to be used. But the deadlines in that initial bill have been exceeded. So all we need to do is say that money is available again. It's still just sitting there. As businesses are going bankrupt, my friends across the aisle are allowing them to go bankrupt, basically holding them for hostage and saying, we're going to keep letting businesses go broke. We're not going to let you use the money that's sitting there waiting to be used to help these businesses, to save them from bankruptcy, to keep them in business. We're not going to let you, we're going to let them keep going out of business because we want a big comprehensive bill. And as I've said previously here, comprehensive bills, that's a term that means we want to make it so big that we can stuff all kinds of pork in there that you won't be able to find before we pass it. That's what is meant in Congress by comprehensive bill. We ought to avoid comprehensive bills, and we ought to have rifle shots addressing just what needs to be addressed and not putting everybody's favorite gift in there in the legislation. So we could have agreed on that months ago. And I understand the position of the majority Democrats is that there's just been so many other important things we haven't been able to get around to agreeing with our Republican friends on the need for just providing the billions and billions of dollars that's already been appropriated, just sitting there. We don't want to make that available because we've got all these important things. And like last week and this week, all these important things. Let's see, we took care of saving the lives of ceiling fans this week. So that apparently was very critical. Last week, we knew that people were suffering immeasurably from COVID. And rather than, again, helping with funding, we took up a marijuana bill that will provide tax incentives and actually some money, some assistance in getting marijuana going stronger nationally. It wasn't a bill that said we're going to let the states decide for themselves. It was a federal bill to really push not medical marijuana, but just marijuana. So the answer, according to the majority, to COVID, businesses going bankrupt, is just smoke some dope and you won't be nearly as anxious about the loss of your business, the suffering of your family, the isolation of our senior citizens. I've had senior citizen places of residence, directors tell me, they just weep every day as they see the seniors not able to spend time with their families in isolation. So we didn't address any of that, no, but we did take care of making dope available through the bill. At least the House has so far. It's doubtful the Senate will take those things up. And we also voted to take care, as I understand it, just pertains to one place where tigers are kept. But as my friend Dr. Desjardins pointed out, he was looking at the numbers, and in the time that we voted, took in this chamber to vote on that bill, there were more people that died of COVID than have died from tigers in the last 25 years. So I know there are disagreements on priorities. Apparently there was a need felt to do this bill to address the needs of tigers, but we still left the needs of those dying from COVID and businesses that are dying because of the restrictions. We left all of that undone to take care of ceiling fans, tigers, marijuana. We could get a bill done rather quickly. And I understand we should have had a bill done 2 years ago. Would have been easy to make it bipartisan. On funding infrastructure, we desperately need to upgrade our infrastructure. According to most engineers and studies, we have like a D- grade on American infrastructure. But my understanding for why we have not done a bill in the last 2 years, the Democrats have been in the majority here in the House, has been a fervent desire to avoid President Trump getting any credit for anything that really helps America. Despite that desire of some, he has gotten an amazing amount accomplished. So I'm hoping that we can come together rather quickly, hopefully by Monday, and we can pass a bill that at least make available the tens of billions of dollars that are just sitting there waiting for authorization to be provided to businesses that are in trouble. And we could do that quite easily. We have been begging. In fact, we've got a bill that my friend Mr. Shabbat from Ohio had filed as the ranking member on Small Business Committee, and it would make the money available. We've had our colleague, Jamie Butler, I'm missing the last name, but it's a discharge petition. Everybody needs to come down and sign it. I think nearly all the Republicans have, saying, let's bring this to the fore. Let's make this money available. So hopefully that will happen, but it hasn't happened yet. But all of that, as desperately serious, critically serious as it is still, when we look at the future of this country, the issue that stands behind the importance of having a free and fair election, because if you can't have that, the republic ceases. We become a totalitarian government, socialist government. Of course, that's a bit redundant. You can't have socialism without having a totalitarian government. And actually, what has often been referred to as a communist government, like in China, the Chinese Communist Party, the Soviet Union, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, that really wasn't communist. We always referred to them as communists. But to communism doesn't exist if there is a government. True communism is where the government fades away, everybody shares and shares alike. But we have seen historically when a rather sad life of a person named Marx following up on Engels, came up with this idea. He was completely wrong. He didn't foresee the arising of a middle class such as we've had here in the United States. Anybody that didn't foresee that and tried to concoct a form of government without foreseeing that is not somebody that should be followed. And just as Dostoevsky said, and Solzhenitsyn quoted him in the Gulag Archipelago, in Dostoevsky's case, he was speaking theoretically in Solzhenitsyn's place, having spent many years in Gulag in a Russian prison. He was speaking not theoretically or hypothetically, but pragmatically from having been the victim of the government. But Dostoevsky said the problem with socialism is not economic. The problem with socialism is atheism. You cannot have a true socialist government unless the government becomes God. And there's no place for the one living God that our nearly all of the founders acknowledged. Even Ben Franklin, that's sometimes said to be a deist, which he clearly wasn't. He said he was, in his autobiography, that he was moved to the contrary over a discussion about deism, but he made very clear he believed in God. He believed that divine providence, God's providence, controlled things, and that's not a deist for those that haven't studied deism. But nonetheless, we're in grave danger, and if the Supreme Court does not take up and resolve this dispute over whether or not we will continue to have a Democratic Republican form of government, then it will cease. And there will not be another Republican elected because of the circumstances that have arisen. So I will address that further, but at this time I would like to yield to my friend from Texas, Mr. Flores.